Um, I saw topics around equality or trying to achieve equality objectives or addressing the inequality. And that came on the back of the transformation agenda, I believe Sandrell, for example, is embarking on. I think the end goal is to sort of achieve an egalitarian society where we all believe we are equal and we live similar or equal lives with respect to certain certain constructs of life. We also need a society that's inclusive and has opportunities, which was also spoken about. And I think that's what my presentation is going to focus on as well. And you will see the subtle themes coming through in that regard. So when we sit in this realm of a very unequal society exacerbated by the pandemic, this presentation is set up to get us thinking along those lines. How should we as engineers, look at engineering, look at life overall in this 21st century? And that's what I'd like to talk around and give some insight and perspectives for us to reflect on. We are sitting in difficult times. A lot of the issues we deal with are based on historic, perhaps, own goals. But going forward, we should start, thinking about not scoring any own goals and focusing on the job at hand. So let's proceed along those lines. My presentation will talk a little bit about the background of why I'm saying what I'm saying, the purpose of this, and then the most important is the three roles that I think engineers could focus on going forward. And perhaps we were doing it at some time in the profession, but as of late, I think there's an opportunity to refocus on them. And that's being a critical thinker, an active citizen, and a solution provider or a solutionist. So those are the three different types of, how you say, thinking patterns I'd like to propose that we reflect on. And on the back of that, see how we re-engineer the way we look at the world, the way we look at the future of this industry, and how we can start to achieve those goals related to inequality that divides us as a nation and as a community. How do we get inclusivity embedded in all of that we do, and not let it be a separate topic? So when we do a project, inclusivity must feed and run through the entire project and not be just a compliance tick box that happens before you are awarded a project, for example. How do we look at inequality, and how do we look at the societies that we do projects in, and how do we get them involved so that they participate in these projects and start to own the assets that we are going to build in this country? So let me proceed with that. Further to the context, the role of engineers. Okay, I've not been an engineer for that many years, probably 25 years for what if I can remember. But the role of engineers since I started has been ever evolving. The engineer was a trusted advisor of a client. And now engineers, if I look at the consultant or the contractor, they're seen as a commodity, as a purchase item. Okay? Very heavily influenced by technology is our game, which is a great tool, because the more we implement technology and software and systems, the more we risk obsolescence. Okay, because we have other things doing the thinking for us. And it's very necessary, I agree. There's cost pressures, there's fast tracking of infrastructure that we need to put into the ground, and all of these good things, but the obsolescence risk does pervade. The impact of speed in engineering gets one into a head-down mode of working. Many of the engineers that I was fortunate enough to lead lived in offices with long banks of desks and computer screens where they would sit and do their engineering work. On site is a little bit more interesting, to be honest with you, and I found that a bit more exciting because day to day there were different issues. But if I look at the work and the process level that we work with, the number of processes and compliance requirements, we tend to get one into a head down mode of working. And when I say head down, it means get down and do it, and do as you're told, do what is required. We have financial objectives, And the thinking and the value that engineers would bring ordinarily by way of thinking and being innovative somehow falls by the wayside. So whilst doing this, we have uncertainty about the future because now we're sitting in a place where we can't really predict even what the next month holds for us because we just don't know what the pandemic is going to do. There's financial management and sustainability issues that sit with each one of us because we don't know how our institutions or the businesses that we run will actually pan out. There's monitoring performance, the admin, burden of working in a global firm. If I look at global engineering firms, sometimes even confuses the purpose of what an engineer actually does. So process regulation, competencies and recruiting the right talent in the process of providing infrastructure becomes difficult when we have many engineers that haven't had the opportunity to be capacitated on large projects, for example. And I think Sandral is one of the entities that I would really commend in still keeping on top of the game and bringing projects to market, keeping the industry vibrant and giving hope to society in general. So technology, we spoke about technology. Mr. Essa also spoke about technology and the involvement of academia, for example. But engineers are becoming technology integrators. We're buying and we're grabbing at different types of technologies, bringing it in and landing it on a project and then implementing it. But very little do we actually do by way of development. There's exploding data and untapped opportunities therein, and we have not yet explored that nicely. I think we spoke about smart roads, we spoke about smart cities, but before we can get smart, we really need to know how not smart we are right now. And that comes on the back of data, and that's what we don't have. So it's difficult to have the opportunities at hand when we haven't got the base case scenario. We disconnectedness from our clients, we held at arm's length, and there's also a need to address mentoring on the back of, to assist with inequality and economic participation. So these are the dynamics that we sit with, and that creates a heaviness or a tiredness in one often, weighs you down depending on which of these items you focus on a daily basis. But all in all, it doesn't help one get ahead fast enough. On a macro level, we have factors that affect the business of engineering. There's broadly a great biasness of politics, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And it's especially at the world powers level. Politics is not proving to serve society. It's a focus. There's a huge focus on populism, and it's largely becoming ego-driven. And this is becoming a global phenomenon. If you look at the North, I call it the North. I don't want to name countries. If you look at the West. If you look at some even in the East, recently we had the Hong Kong riots, for example. And if you look at the way authorities deal with protests and the arrogance and the disconnectedness that pervades. Corruption in the private and public sector is rife. I don't think we need to talk a lot more than that about that topic. And what it comes to is a lack of a balanced approach to solving problems. Because we live in a crisis environment, we tend to shoot from the hip to put out fires on a daily basis. And there's no one looking forward anymore. So the discussions around strategy are not easy to have these days because of short-termism and crisis management. So problems appear to be coming faster than we're solving them. Okay? Countries are closing borders, and they have become very hostile to migration and urbanization. I still believe Brexit is the reason for that happening. And it has also led to one of the largest property chain collapses in the recent weeks on the back of COVID. And the list goes on and on. So I think from a macro level, we also have challenges, and those are things that trouble one and make one concerned and creates fear and disillusionment. So all in all, we have a set of or a thinking of hopelessness that pervades within our society right now. And we find it difficult to figure out how to actually get ourselves out of this sense of hopelessness. So can we think differently? Maybe that's a way to look at things. re-believe in our role as civil engineers, repurpose our value proposition using a transformative approach. And we'll get to that kind of discussion just now because it sort of contradicts with the transactional nature of business and work, and to serve civil society as we are meant to do. Okay, so when I talk about the critical thinker, these are some of the bullet points that come to mind. If I quote some of our esteemed academics, we cannot adopt the same method we use to get into a situation to get out of it. The solution has to be different, and it needs to be used and future fit. And people need to, and us as engineers serving society, have to work towards balancing these four objectives. And this is the crux of the critical thinking that I'd like to talk about. Along the lines of society and the social aspects, there's complicated dynamics of relationships of various kinds with respect to culture, migration, families, communities. There's collapse of trust in our communities, and literally we have countries burning down. Now, when it comes to engineering, and when we are doing a design of a road, we tend to forget about the balance that I speak about. Because very quickly, when we start focusing on doing engineering work, the culture of a community may not be embedded in our thinking at all times. Geopolitical is another phenomenon or another construct of this complexity. International relationships, dynamics of power, rapid change are what defines us. And when I say rapid change, I mean a tweet from Donald Trump moves more money out in global markets than what we would like to solicit as funding for our infrastructure. It's the power of international relationships. And globalization is a phenomenon that pervades and affects various countries in different ways. So geopolitical is a phenomenon we cannot deny, but it is there as an opportunity to explore further. And when I talk about geopolitical and international relationships, in our case as South Africans, there is the opportunity to further embed integration within the SADC region, for example. Okay? When it comes to Earth and the study of complex climate, I still believe we are only on the tip of the iceberg in understanding what it is that we are doing to this Earth of ours. There is a lot of theory around it, a lot of studies, and there's antagonists and protagonists around the idea of climate change up until today. But until we take these into discrete parts of infrastructure, we will find that when we have extreme events, we will still lose lives. Until we embed climate change in the design of our new codes of practice, we will still risk destruction due to the events to come. Then there's the techno-economic, which sits largely in our domain as engineers, which is largely around the economic component of our projects and ensuring that we deliver value each and every time that we do a project. It has an element of ethics in there. I remember a time working for consultants where if we were appointed and we were able to finish the work, we gave the money back to the client. I don't think that exists anymore, but it's coming from that perspective where we work towards solving a problem and creating and maintaining ethics all along the way. When we are conflicted by making money, a lot of the top 3 bullet points fall by the wayside because it does not serve one's interests. And in any event, it may even cost one more money. So that is part of the barriers to entry or the barriers of us actually trying to incorporate society, geopolitical and earth-related issues into our engineering work. It's a cost burden and it doesn't serve the transacting entities directly. And I think that's what is the crux of critical thinking that we need to bring more amongst all of our engineering professionals. Future firms as a result, I know Mr. Essa also spoke about future firms, but in my opinion, future firms will need to incorporate all of the above to solve these problems. And engineers are well poised to expand their analytical capability into dealing with change, knowledge, and to steady the Earth systems with the technological and technical innovation. Basically, we have to undo some of the wrongs we are doing right now. So solutions need to be innovative, and they need to be integrated along those four constructs I spoke about now. When it comes to the active citizen, there's a need for us to regain our sense and focus whilst we have our daily jobs. And that is not something we can fix immediately, and I'm very well aware of that. However, we need to do a bit more. And I think when I'm talking to those around this call, for example, I think you are the converted, because you are doing that bit more by joining this conversation, for example. We also need to focus on meaningful activities that we are passionate about. Not all of our jobs produce the gratification and purpose we would like. And this is where I think I would like to say, and I hope that question comes up later, as to the role of SAICI and how could members receive greater benefits by being part of SAICI going forward. So participate in initiatives that develop the creative side, study a different subject. This is how one starts to become that, I would say, transdisciplinary engineer, understanding all of the dynamics around solutions that are required for infrastructure. Participate in societies like SAICI and other voluntary associations. Get involved and become active. Write papers, give talks, give back. Giving back gives purpose, and it is infectious, funnily enough. Focus on short-term goals and achieve them. Don't waste time, as time is a very precious commodity, and we seem to treat it very liberally. If it does not relate to a goal, my opinion, stop doing it. The solutionist is the last attribute that I would like to leave us with. South Africa needs leadership in all parts of our business, especially and specifically in infrastructure. There hasn't been a long history of successful spend in our last 15 to 20 years. Government has admitted that they have a lack of capacity. And when I say successful spend, I mean projects coming in within time, within the budgets. So we need professionals to enter and lead government institutions. We need leaders to lead their own businesses. We need leaders to lead corporates that are involved in the provision of infrastructure. Where do we find these leaders? Okay. Professional engineers have to subscribe to a code of ethics. And this is the biggest, perhaps, parting shot I would leave us with. We need ethical behavior now more than ever before. Ethics is our current downfall. And if we don't get our game plan right, we will lose, including those that have never had the experience of a win. Civil engineers are by definition servants of civil society, and we need to remember that. It is not a job that will make you a billionaire. Because if you want to do that, start a tech firm and sell it to Alibaba. Okay. Overall, the point is the COVID pandemic has brought an economic reset, which means we need to reconfigure how we deal with inequality and economic inclusion. So it's fundamental that we put our heart and souls into doing it. We really need to lose sleep that this is not happening and not just dialogue around it. So we need to, SAICI provides that opportunity, funnily enough. It's a lobby group. Depending on the causes we would like to take on, we can offer training and we equip most of our engineers to become leaders. But most importantly, it gives the opportunity for you to let your head up and look at the future, participate in causes, and become an active citizen in this wonderful country. So in conclusion, my recommendation is live the values, learn with meaning, think society at all times. Seek to always help and capacitate whenever you can. Make time for another person. Our strength lies in our diversity, and that's unique to us. And that's the opportunity for us to show how the world should live in peace. Thank you.